Global Municipal, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
So to our online participants and also those who are joining us in the room, welcome once again. Today is the second day of COP30 and we are discussing just transition as the negotiations continue and as the urbanization ministerial takes place in Belém. So today is an important day and we are here to discuss a little bit implementing just and inclusive climate action at the local level. We will hear examples from the local level on how things are happening, but this conversation is happening at an important day because in parallel we have the urbanization and climate action ministerial meetings that are taking place, and also this morning COP30 presidency organized an open dialogue focusing on just transition. And we have a panelist from SALGA and also South Africa Local Government Association. And also our colleagues made it very clear during this conversation that actually just transition has a very important local component and it can only be achieved through the local action and through the multi-level action. So this is also the spirit behind the work that ICLEI has been doing since long time, and through especially our project, which is the project called Include, and there we are working with the German governments to bring the German local governments to bring social equity at the heart of their climate measures. So by aligning climate action with social inclusion, so we aim to make sure that no one is left behind during the design and implementation of climate policies. So in this session, we will look towards how local governments are just doing that, embedding justice, equity, intergenerational justice, and tackling global and national agendas. So we have an excellent panel, and I am very pleased to moderate this session. And also, I think it would be important to kind of remind, I know that our online participants see the names, but for those in the room, we would like to kind of remind who is joining us. So I have the pleasure to have Andreas Wolter, the city councillor from the city of Cologne, and also the president of the Network Climate Alliance. I have the pleasure to have Camila Moreira, youth climate activist and policy advisor from Sao Paulo. I have the pleasure to have Sitole Bamka, CEO of the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, and Silke Lunebach from the Climate Alliance. So I would like to start with a quick question to all of you to explain to our audience, both in the room and online, why you think it is important to recognize and leverage the key role of local governments in delivering holistic and people-centered just transitions. Maybe we can start with the order of sitting, and then we can have the first reflection from the Councillor Wolters.
Yeah, I'm from the city of Cologne, and for us, our approach is that climate action puts people first, and that was not our job we did, that was the job of the people in the last years. And since 2018, there was a big movement in our society that says we want to get climate neutral in energy and in heating. And they collected signatures. There was a petition which was signed by several 10,000 of people, of Cologne residents. and that there were so many signatures that if the city council didn't adopt this petition 100%, there will be directly a referendum. And at that point, both the city of Cologne, the city council, and the NGO, so the people who started the petition, were afraid to lose the referendum. And then we started to negotiate. We had this process with the citizens, with the NGOs. It was more than 1 year. At least we said, okay, let's get climate neutral not in 2030, let's get climate neutral in 2035. So 5 years later, because the city of Cologne owns, by example, our power plant by coal-based, and it was not possible in 7 years to build a new power plant on sustainable energy and points like this and develop our programs. And that's now what we made was an approach with our citizens. And that made it in Cologne perhaps a little bit easier. It was not top down from the government who said, okay, our citizens, you have to do this, this, and this. It was developed together with the citizens. I think that was one of the most important, I would like to say victory of everyone, because we did it together, and it was proved also by some climate institutes to say, okay, it's difficult, but you can reach this goal in 2040 to get climate neutral in this year. So, by example, it's a big challenge. By example, we had 11,000 PVs on the roofs, 11,000 roofs every year. So you can see the challenge. That's a lot. And but we are on the way. We are a little bit behind the timeline, but at least it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Camilla, we can continue with you. Why you think the local level is important? Because you are also having two hats in this session. You are the policy advisor for Sao Paulo, but also you represent the youth movement. So can you reflect a little bit why it's important to work at the local level for the just transition?
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. Well, I work in the São Paulo city government, and São Paulo is the largest metropolis in Latin America, so it's not easy to think any policy there, especially climate policies. But we are here at COP30 discussing climate change at global level. So, for example, we are discussing how to reduce greenhouse emissions, but when you go back to the cities, this take a different format, because in cities we are talking about transportation, we are talking about water usage, we are talking about waste management. So we need that voices of the local government in these spaces, because they implement the policies. Here we talk about strategy, we talk about a lot of things, but in the day of the government, they need to provide services every time, and they need to rethink these policies. So I think that local governments are very important, because they can meet the citizens' needs. So sometimes we think that a community needs a green park, for example, but they are claiming about a health facility. So when you work in the local government level, we can see how to implement these policies and how to deliver good services in practice.
Yeah, thank you very much. So if I continue with this quick round of questions, Sitole, Salga plays a very important role in our local government and municipal authorities constituency. And also you play a very important role in the discussions with the national government to move ahead with the climate action. From your perspective, what is the role of local governments in connecting with the national government and moving ahead with the just transition agenda?
No, thanks very much, and good afternoon to my panelists and the people that are in the audience. So local government turns theory into practice. I think it's a very important matter for us to recognize. So if you are an activist government that is dear about the needs of the people that you are supposed to serve, the first point of call that you know is that you want to be accountable. So who's going to make you more accountable? It's not national government. Communities and societies make you more accountable. And the best way of becoming that accountable in a differentiated way is to have strong local governments. In South Africa, we have about 257 municipalities. They cover the length and the breadth of that country. There's not a single square of land in South Africa that is not governed, right? And that's how it was conceptualized in the very first place. And the intention of the fathers of our democracy was to make sure that there is better accountability. Therefore, you have to cover each and every square inch. So you can't be sitting in another level or sphere of government and think that you are better accountable than local government is. It's very natural, right? Yep. Secondly, I think, and this is a very practical thing, a mayor is not a president of the country. A mayor is a very practical lady or a gentleman. Is able to count what is my set of robots or traffic lights that I have. What is the size? As a councillor, I'm sure you needed to know what is the size of your pipes, what is the length, how old are they, and all of this. So it's a very practical science. That's what local government is about. It then enables you to be accountable precisely because you are able to count things and apply them in a very differentiated way. What happens in Cologne is definitely going to be different to what happens in Stuttgart or whatever, any other municipality. So each municipality, each mayor, each councillor, each municipal manager reports different things, of course, to national government. And that's why there's the importance of that relationship between your national level or national sphere and the local sphere. And that's what makes local government generally exciting. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't enjoy to be a mayor. In fact, most presidents in the world started by being mayors, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes, I'm coming from Brussels, from Belgium, so I will repeat the former Belgian Prime Minister's kind of sentence, who is now a mayor. I feel much better here. So if we continue, so the former Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo said, when he became a mayor, I feel much better here. So that is the, yes, I think we feel that, or we hear that feeling from different sides. And building on this practical angle, so it is, I mean, local governments are the ones, sorry for that, they hear the voice of citizens and they need to find practical challenges. And a way to find practical challenges is to move ahead with the climate mitigation and climate adaptation agenda. And I will kind of continue with you, Silke, a little bit from the Climate Alliance network perspective. How do you see this kind of the climate action and the just transition agendas coming together at the local level?
Yeah, it's on. Okay. Yeah, as you just mentioned, Climate Alliance, from the beginning onwards, we had this approach. So we are a network of European cities. We are around 2,000 cities in 26 countries now. And we have a cooperation with indigenous rainforest people. So we always had one pillar of climate action in Europe, but also on the other hand, towards climate justice with our partners in the indigenous rainforest. So, but I don't want to say that climate justice is just a matter of working in cooperation with indigenous rainforests. Also in our municipalities in Europe, we have to have climate justice in mind, just mentioning energy poverty or other topics. So local authorities, as we just heard, they are the key players in the socio-ecological transformation. I think that's that's key. And they themselves, they have many different roles. They are owners, they're relevant for, they do procurement, but they're also a role model for the citizens. So I think that's really important to have in mind when we talk about the transformation and leaving no one behind, to really get the people involved and really all people involved. It has to be an approach who has to be gender sensitive, but also in an intersectional approach. So, because we have now a discussion sometimes that climate action and gender, you just mentioned, they are somehow the buzzwords. Nobody wants to speak about it anymore because there are a lot of, I don't have to mention the discussion and policies in different countries, but that's really a problem, that we really have to get the people talking about climate change, and really get them involved and becoming active.
Yeah. Well, we discussed a little bit about kind of why it's important to kind of work with at the local level on just transition and to integrate the equity in the kind of the climate action considerations, but it's not always that easy to do that, and cities from across the world face different challenges and different barriers in kind of designing climate mitigation, adaptation, and climate action policies at the local level. I would like to kind of ask you, Andreas, if possible, to elaborate a little bit kind of how Cologne approached the climate neutrality in a kind of equitable way, and what were the challenges that you faced?
So at least I would like to start with 2021, when we had heavy floods in our region, and people died, and there was a damage of 30 billion euros. So and everyone in our region knows this is climate change, and so everyone knows how to act. In my first speech, I told you about this power plant based on coal. And we replace actually, by example, with the Europe's biggest heat pump, to took the water from the Rhine River and transform it to warm water and heating for the heatings for 50,000 households. And that are mostly apartments in poorer neighborhoods in the north. That's point one. The second is also we support now the solar energy, so solar panels, battery storages, and plug-in solar devices on residential buildings, in community gardens, at non-profit facilities. By example, poor people, we increased the support for energy by 50% if they purchase climate-neutral energy to their households. That are the points we are doing, and we also generate that they can buy solar panels for their balconies or for their gardens or whatever, and that's the support for people who have less money. So we support it by 50% more. And what we do, there are some non-profit organizations who build solar panels on the roofs for residents who don't have the money to invest, and they sell it to a fair price to the people living in those houses. So that's the process we started together with our residents and with our with our society. You know? So Cologne is a city since 600 years where no king, no dukes governed this. That they don't govern the city. It was governed by the citizens, and it's mostly a bottom-up organization, our city, and in this case it works also quite good.
Yeah. And the challenges you face, do you face any challenges in the implementation of those policies?
Yes, the challenge at least is, so we made this this contract with the citizens, and also the citizens have to deliver. So we need also the investment of the citizens in their houses. That is one challenge. And second is we have to talk about money. So by example, the heat pump, we're talking about this millions of euros supported by the national government. with grants, and at least we manage it to get the money for it. So the city of Cologne can't work only on its own costs. So we need support from Europe, we need support for the national government, we need support from the state government, and that are the challenges.
Yeah, thank you very much. Camila, moving forward to you, I mean, Sao Paulo also had the floods recently, and then you needed to have kind of rebuild a number of things. And I assume that even though they are kind of very far from Germany to kind of Sao Paulo, Brazil, the challenges at the local level are the same. You need to kind of access to finance, and you need to also work as a kind of whole of society approach to make sure that the policies, or when you build it back better. So from your perspective, how do you see the intergenerational aspect of just transition, and how it can be integrated in the kind of the build back better approach in the just transition after the different climate disasters?
Yeah, we usually talk that a seat that works for children and elder people, it works for everyone. So I think that the first thing is to bring young people to the table, because we are not there in most cases, most spaces. So we need to bring young, but we need to listen to them, because young people has a unique perspective, and we know what we want for the future. So I think that policymakers and policy leaders need to understand this. And young people are in the front line of the climate change. When a climate disaster occurs, you can see young people mobilizing to provide food, to provide house, and to create projects to face these issues. So I think that we also good at communicating and providing climate education tools. So for me, it is about connecting policymakers, young people, children in a commit. So we need to create a mechanism inside the government bodies to listen to us and to co-create and co-design solutions together.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will move to Sitole and ask you a little bit on kind of this, maybe building on Camila's point on kind of co-creation mechanisms, and also building on Andreas's point on the need for finance to kind of, we need the finance to reach to the local level to finance the policies and projects that are co-created with the society for them to deliver societal benefits. And how do you see this happening in the South Africa context, and how can this COP, for example, contribute to these discussions?
No, thanks again. So perhaps let me just start on the point of the intergenerationalness.
Yes.
Of the just energy agenda. I think we are not going to succeed to achieve just energy if we do not think intergenerationally. What we are doing, I think, today, it's not about us. It has to be about the future. And naturally, if that's the case, it means we have to involve meaningfully young people as a component of creating and co-creating solutions. And by the way, they are much more intelligent than their predecessor generations. I mean, they are more innovative. And I think it's something that we need to get out of our heads as those that are responsible for institutional and decision-making at this point in time. So there's an intergenerational agenda that we need to drive so that those that are coming behind us are educated about why you must have just energy.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think we may want to get out of the mentality that energy is only for life, right? Your lights at home. Energy has to be about productivity. It has to be enabled to make sure that young people depend on cleaner energy for their own economic productivity. At the bare minimum, you reduce the cost of production.
Yep.
If you are utilizing solar as a matter of example, and I'm sure there's many other innovations that can be applied to make productivity or economic production much more affordable for those that want to enter into commercial activities, such as the young people. As I'm saying, this is more about them. Local government currently, in my view, is struggling to secure the big funds that you find in the United Nations system. Yeah, it's okay, there's a fund. Almost at every COP, there's a fund that gets to be created. But it's very difficult to secure those funds. You have to go jump one hoop and go to another hoop, and all you're looking for is $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
When in fact municipalities, they are looking for millions. They're not looking for trillions. So can national governments and multilateral governments make it easy for local government to gain access to those finances, so that when we gain access to those finances, we make it possible for these young people to gain access to reproductive means of economic production. I think it is that simple, right? And it doesn't mean we must not be made responsible to account for the funds that we would have secured from the big funds, whether they are global funds. But it's difficult to apply for $1 million. Yes. How much more for 1 trillion? Right? We don't have that capacity. As I said, municipalities are not the same. In our context, large municipalities, Cape Town, Johannesburg, they have some level of capacity. They don't have all capacity. Yes. They have some. Now imagine the smallest municipality that has the most poor. You were in eThekwini 2 years ago, am I correct? Yeah. And the experience there of disaster is much more intense than anywhere else in the smaller municipalities. And you're talking about local government that has to be the first point of call when there is a disaster, when we have to respond to climate change, when we have to change to just energy, and thus creating jobs. So ultimately, make things easy for local government to gain access to finances. It doesn't mean we are going to be unaccountable as local government. That's my view.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it's a very, very valid point about kind of the finance discussions, because as the local government constituency, we have been asking for local governments to have access to direct finance under the UNFCCC structure since long time. Because as you mentioned, when kind of the floods hit, when the wildfires hit, local level needs to be the first responder, and it always takes time to get the funding from the UN to the national, sometimes to the regional, and then to the local level. So it's always kind of, we need to have these structures where the local level can have direct access to direct funding. I will also kind of bring it a little bit back to the network perspective. Silke, you mentioned in your first intervention we need to think in a kind of the intersectional and gender responsive way at the local level, and we need kind of this capacities and the enabling conditions. So what do we need to make sure that we have this intersectional just transition planning at the local level?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of information needed, because many times this knowledge or this aspect that climate change, all aspects are gender sensitive. And that's something we really have to have in mind. And though it's not only the causes of the emission, the impact, the policies, but also the measures. So it really depends on the local level which kind of measures I'm going to bring forward. As you all mentioned, finance is always a problem, but when we talk about finance, then we should think about to include all the people, not just a group of people. You just mentioned heat pumps or solar systems, but we also have to offer something for people who don't have their own houses, for example. I think that's very relevant to really offer something for people who don't have their own house, or who even poorer and have no access to energy, as I said. So I think there's a lot to do to really make also our local authorities aware of this aspect, to have a more gender sensitive and intersectional view on the topic. And what we did in a project, on a gender mainstream project, which I made with our partner Life, which I'm very happy that they are here as well. It's a project where we are working with 15 model communities, municipalities in Germany, where we directly have a look on their measures. It's not a new measure, it's really a measure they are planning in their municipality. So the idea is really to let them rethink what they plan, what they do, and have the more sensitive approach to really say, okay, you are planning to have your let's say, climate action plan. Which groups of people you are going to include? At what time does your event takes place? Are people able to come to your event because it's maybe in the nighttime where, for example, people who take care of others are not able to come? These are the small things you really have to have in mind, because very often we have great measures which cost a lot of money, or even not always the biggest thing, but we really have to have in mind to really include different groups in our municipalities.
What you mentioned reminded me a little bit what Camilla explained. If it works for children and the elders, then it can work for the big part of the society. But indeed, we need to think about also the disadvantaged groups and the different communities based on their community cultures, about how we are designing these transformative processes. So I wanted to ask if kind of how at the city level you're integrating these different communities into the planning of the climate action. You mentioned a little bit kind of the projects that the NGOs are doing to put the solar panels on the households who cannot afford to buy the solar panels or to kind of be a part of the energy transition themselves. What kind of incentives you are providing to those citizens to be a part of those projects?
So at least Germany is a federal republic. And our city owns his own energy company. So we are producing energy and we sell it also to the people. So there's a good instrument for the city to make fair and just prices for the energy, also for the poorer people. So that's one. I think that's the most important thing we have. At least we also have to talk to each other. That's also very, very important. That is not something top down. We, by example, by renovating the houses for less energy consumption. So people sometimes were afraid that then the prices of their apartments will rise. So at least we said, okay, but then you pay less energy for your apartment. So that's always discussions with our citizens. So you always have to communicate with them. I think that's the most important thing. So we always say no one has to be left behind, but at least the most important thing is to talk to the people, to explain that they understand what's happening. And we have also some problems and some protests in our city too. But I think the level of protest is very low. So that is perhaps also one of our challenges, and we did it in a quite good way.
Yep. Camilla, would you like to also reflect a little bit on this kind of intersectionality and the community engagement part, on how you see they should be designed at the local level?
Okay, I'll talk about São Paulo experience, because we have a climate action plan for the city. And this plan is in a revision process, And now we are talking with more groups and more areas within the city government to put them in the planning. So I think that the first thing to do is planning and listen to these people so we can have a more real view of the citizen needs. And the other thing that we are doing is to talking talking with other departments in the city government. So how can we link climate agenda with disabled people agenda in the city, with human rights agenda, with education? Education is a key area to talk about just transition, because we have a school in each region of the city. So we can achieve all kinds of communities through education. So for example, São Paulo has 3 indigenous schools. So through school and through education can link that needs and bring these views to the planning.
Yeah. So we have a heavy rain. I hope the mics will kind of catch up with the voice of the rain that we are hearing right now. I would like to also ask a little bit the South African experience, how this community-based planning, just transition planning, is happening in South African local government context. Because I think the cities and the local governments learn from each other's experiences quite a lot, and the places like COPs are also important to share these experiences. So if you can elaborate on this.
Yeah. No, thanks. So one of the things that we have managed to do in the last 5 years is to start as a country, as governments, both at a local and provincial and national level. We started by putting institutions in place. Right? So that was the first thing. Obviously, that went with understanding what is going to be our response to climate as a strategy, with different components, right, from ecology, from energy, dealing with water and the various risks. Disaster, by the way, I think it's important for me to acknowledge the assistance from the Brazilians and the Germans combined, because both countries have been partnering with us for us to learn from how they're doing their work and their response, and similarly, how we want to sort of harvest ideas that are adaptable to our own situation. So we're quite thankful for those partnerships. From there, we have moved into the educational element, which is what I was talking about, that being intergenerational. Because without the future understanding why we are doing this, the likelihood is that we are not going to succeed. So the second aspect has been the educational. So we've got our institutional aspects in place, of course, with some struggle on issues of financing, as we were saying. And we are in the educational element, where, as a consequence, people involvement has to be done in a massive way without looking or working with small pilots, which are themselves green shoots, right, of how we are seeking to respond to the climate change, whether it is energy or any other aspect of our response to climate change is. Yeah.
Yep. Silke, I will have a kind of another question for you, which is kind of, I think the scaling up is a problem for many local governments. Also in Germany or in Europe, also we see that kind of there are funds to innovate and test, but when it comes to scaling up or kind of the building back better, or kind of when we start to talk about billions of euros that are needed for big infrastructure investments to climate-proof our cities, the amounts are not there. So, and what needs to happen, for example, to have the scaling up mechanisms in Germany or in Europe or in the global arena, like at COPs that we see now?
Yeah, local. Can I? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, sure, now it's getting better. No more rain. So local climate action is embedded in this multi-level construct. So we have the different levels, and we have to find a way how we really can support the local level with the different financing frameworks, etc. We already mentioned we are here at COP. There are so many frameworks. We have the Paris Agreement. We have the Agenda 2030. We have so many frameworks around, and which are a great basis for climate action and also for including all people. When we talk about leaving no one behind, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. So there we have have a good basis. What is really needed is then how we can really get the frameworks into actions, and really getting frameworks for and support for the local level. I think there are quite some actions which are very relevant. Just to mention the Energy Poverty Action Hub with the EPA project, which is a huge initiative of the EU, where they're really tackling energy poverty. So I think this is really something really much needed, and there are also now more funding coming for energy and climate justice, which is good at the moment. As you said, scaling up, what does it mean? Is it just a project? Maybe there's a bit more for funding for a project, but how we can really get it into, spread it a bit wider, and not being always dependent on a funded project, because a project ends after 3 or 5 years. But what comes next? That's and then we have to. And we know how the situation is, not only in Germany on the national level, not in Europe, but also on the international level. So the local level is really struggling. It has a lot of really so many tasks to do, because they are closest to the citizens. They are the ones the citizens approaching to, so they have to react, and so financing is always a problem. But thinking of really including everybody, we have to really trying to get to be more sensitive to think about different approaches, and trying to be more inclusive in our projects and in our measures.
Thanks a lot. So I will turn to the room and ask if there are any questions from the room for the speakers. So we have one question, I think, from the front. Was that? Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Thank you very much for your presentations. I think it was quite encouraging to hear a lot of the issues that I'm closely passionate about being raised. My name is Buitumelo Molete. I am from the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, which is the biggest trade union in South Africa, organizing 1.6 million workers. Colleagues, you speak about youth and gender, but I did not hear the issue of workers being raised. And I think it's going to be important to start thinking like that at the local level, because while we speak about localization and encouraging for the local economy to be developed in terms of the just transition, workers are also central to this transition, and some provisions need to be made for them. And this is not only for formal workers, because I do speak for unionized workers, but there's also an informal economy that we need to start thinking about in terms of the local economy. So if I can get some reflections on issues of skills, and if there are any plans in place to involve and include workers, especially for South Africa. And just to reflect, I was in Berlin and Hamburg just last week, hosted by the German government, and we were going through the hydrogen economy in Germany. And I think, quite honestly, Germany is quite well funded. It's either from the EU or from the state itself and taxes. And really, it seems like the transition in Germany is almost wholly subsidized. So what are the reflections for the Global South? There's talk about finance and developmental finance, but it's two different worlds. When Germany speaks and South Africa speaks on the transition, when it comes to the actual financing of this, I don't think our state has that sufficient capacity, and we do rely on grants. You mentioned the Paris Agreement, but the way in which climate finance in this current trajectory is being administered, I don't think it's true to the Paris Agreement. So can we get some reflections on that? And I think my last issue will be the issue directly linked to SALGA. We have very strong unions in South Africa, the South African Municipal Workers Union and etc. Is there a relationship that SALGA specifically has with SAMU in the municipality to see how we can best transition in the municipality? And I really appreciate that you make the linkages to youth, to water, to food and sustainability. It's not just an energy transition, and I really feel encouraged that SALGA sees it like that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more question, I think. We can take that, and then I can turn back to the panelists for final remarks.
Hi, can you hear me?
No, maybe we try again. That's
Hi?
yes, it's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I think I wanted to make a question regarding the intergenerational mechanisms that you guys were talking about. I think that although it's really important, it can also be very challenging because different generations often use different channels and have different priority in terms of on how to communicate. So do you have any experience or any suggestions on how these mechanisms could be developed in a way that they find the common ground between different generations and allow for that conversation to happen?
Thank you. I think we have 4 questions right now, and we have the question about the role of workers at the local transition and how the local governments can work with the workers. We have this very rightful question about the funding issue at the global north versus at the global south, and how we can make sure that also the global funds are distributed fairly and equitably. The third question is, I think, on the intergenerational aspect. It's like how to design processes that enable intergenerational justice. And then there was a 4th question, which is specific to SALGA and how we can think more holistically in the South African context. Should I give the floor to you one after another to reflect on, or do you want to see Tony?
I think let me start and talk to the relationship that SALGA has with its partners in the trade union. So for us, trade unions are partners in governance, right? Not partners in government, but partners in governance. The act of ensuring that the production processes, the distribution of whatever resources we have as municipalities is equitable to workers, who, by the way, are themselves a vulnerable group. The workers for us are as vulnerable as women, they're as vulnerable as young people, right? So they need to be affirmed in one way or the other. We are fortunate as the South African Local Government Association in the strength of the relationship that we have with our fraternal organizations that are representatives of workers. SAMU is a partner, and the other one is IMATU. What we have managed to do is to stabilize the relationship over the last 30 years, comparatively speaking, across all sectors, economic sectors. The local government sector has been more stable from a labor relations point of view. This does not mean there are no strikes in one municipality or another, but overall, we've managed to create a stability and relationship. That has then enabled us now to start talking about building municipalities. And that's where this agenda comes. And we are right at the beginning of that phase. And I'm sure you might be aware, we have managed to have stable relationships. We continue crossing our fingers that we will maintain these relationships, because without the workers, we are not going to be able to achieve them. We are not going to be able to collect waste. We are not going to be able to provide clean energy. We're not going to be able to provide water. Nothing, right? So it's a partnership. It's not just it's not a Mickey Mouse, if there's such a thing, relationship. We regard the workers as partners in governance. So that attitude on its own works. And then when it comes to the intergenerationalness of involving youth, I think I did make mention that one, you have to be meaningful. I mean, the notion that municipalities enable you to scale up innovation from the bottom, I think is the essence of bringing young people to the party, right? Whether they are there in the form of a transitional mechanism, in other words, where they are part and parcel of structures of the municipality. In Salga, we have just established, or we are in the process of finalizing the youth commission, if I may use that, within Salga. Why? It's the political consciousness on our part that without youth, you don't have to be 57 years old like me to be a mayor, right? You could be much more less. And if you have not been elected, at the bare minimum, we need to create a space where we orientate people that are young to understand what is to be in council. Because being in council implies accountability for the funds of the public, amongst other things. So there's a lot we could say on exactly the same subject matter.
Yep. Sitole, as you have the mic, I want also you to reflect on the funding issue between the global north and the global south. I think it's also an important element in this
Certainly,
context.
and I think the point that's being made, you can be, as I'm saying, we are cautious as Salga to be dual in where do we harvest ideas. So we've gone to the global north, which is Germany, and we've come to the global south, which is the Brazilians, to understand. And in the middle of those two intersections is to ask ourselves the question, what does it mean for us? Because not everything that is happening in the global south applies to South Africa, notwithstanding the fact that we are part and parcel of the south. And not everything that's happening in the global north is wrong for us, right? So there's lessons, I think we have to be politically matured enough to want to learn from anywhere else in the world, as long as that enables us to adapt to our situation. And I think that's the essence of what needs to happen. And I would encourage anybody or any other country not to be exclusively southern or exclusively northern. Try to understand the whole world, because ultimately you have a responsibility to contribute to the north. Where the north is going wrong, you must say, no, northerns, you're going wrong, right? And we've got many examples in that, in that instance,
Yeah, thank you very much. Who else? Silke, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, wonderful what you said already. But what I wanted to add is it is really important also for the cities to really approach or get new allies on board. That's really one of the main things, that not only the workers or young people, but also really trying to get new links to different groups. And I think your question was very relevant. How I'm going to approach my citizens, how I'm going to approach young people, because as a city, what possibilities do I have? I might have a website. I might have, I don't know, maybe a kind of newspaper, but which city? Yeah, but it's really a question. Do I have Instagram? Do I have a team who is really able to really be a professional on social media and trying to get young people involved or at least informed? I think that's really an important question. And when we work in our project with the different cities, that's always the question. We always say the local level is closest to the citizens, but citizens are so different. We have young people, older people, we have workers, we have so many different people which we have to approach differently to really reach them. And I think that's really something municipalities have to work on. It's not, like, it's not enough to have a website or to have an open town hall. Who's getting my information? Who knows about my approaches? Who knows about my climate action plan and the measures and the offers I'm giving to my citizens? I think that's really something we have to, or the cities have to learn a lot as well, and we can support them as a networks.
Yes, thank you, Camila. Would you like to reflect a little bit and then? we're coming to the end.
Yeah, I'd like to add a reflection about the workers and the fact that we need them when we are talking about climate change policies because they are key actors in green jobs in the future of the work. So workers and young people, they are central in this debate, and I feel that there is not so well connection yet in some cities, especially in Brazil. So the first thing is start a more coordination approach with younger people, with works and all other vulnerable groups and all other actors, city actors. Other thing is the funding because talking about Brazil reality, many cities don't have enough resource for basic services. So when a flooding occurs, where can have money? How can the mayors and the public agents fund this? So I think that is a crucial debate. Also, if you want to make long-term policies like transition public fleets, for example, in São Paulo, we need money. And how can you get this money? So it's a crucial question, and it's very different. It's a very different reality from the global south. And we are here at COP30 to talk about it. We need to say to the world that we need money, not only words but money. And finally, talking about intergenerational mechanisms. For example, last Friday, we had a project with university students, especially young people, and in that moment, they present to us some solutions. And some public agents said to me that, "Oh my God, we are so, we have a lot of work, and sometimes we can think like these people, and the young people has a unique lens. So they have a different vision of the policies, and they bring innovative solutions. And it happening on practice, just a project that we launch and we listen to these ideas. Also, I think that is about creating safe and open space to young people. We don't need a formal event or a formal environment to talk. We need a safe space where we can meet city leaders. I think the most important thing is put these people in the same room, because most young people don't have this opportunity like me. Fortunately, I met city leaders every day in my life, so I can talk to them, I can show my views. Finally, it is about starting. It is about create something, and so this can grow, it can be developed with the time.
Yeah, thank you. For the final kind of question, I will come back to you if you would like to reflect on the questions asked to the panelists.
So I want to add something. So Germany is a strong economy, one of the strongest after China and United States, and we made always fair prices for the people as well for our companies and our economy. And there were subventions always, also for the coal and the nuclear power, immense subventions for them. So now we have subventions for the and grants for the solar energy or the windmills. So that works quite good. And all what I said before is, if the economy is weak, it doesn't work. So we can do a lot on a local level, but we yeah, we need the money from the state, from the taxes. And if there is not a good economy, also the transition won't work. So that's one point. The second point is what we can do, and what you mentioned is that there has to be an exchange between the global south and the global north. The problems are the same. And what we see, by example, climate change was caused by the global north. But the disasters are worldwide. In Africa, here in Latin America, in South America. And so the loss and damage fund are very, very important. This is a very important thing to help the poorer countries. What I very often hear from countries like, for example, in Africa, is that we have good governance in Europe. So we can exchange also about how to make a good management and to fight against corruption. That's also a very important point, that to make stable economies, not in the global north, not only there, also in the global south. And that's the reason we are here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think we came to the end of this session. I would like to thank all of the panelists for their insightful reflections and the contributions for how to implement just and fair climate transition at the local level. And I would like to ask a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you very much for joining us today. Oh, no, that's...
Global Municipal, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.